Channing Tatum's Gambit deserves his own movie. Fans went crazy when they saw him in The Void in Deadpool and Wolverine. Tatum campaigned for a decade to play the character. His design and powers are very well adapted. And in this scene, shared by Ryan Reynolds, we confirmed that the character survived Elias' attack. We don't know who created this portal or which universe Remy will travel to, but we do know that we'll see him again in future projects. He'll likely show up in Secret Wars, because everyone and their mom will show up in that movie. But today in Mr. Headcannon, we're going to explain why Gambit should have his own movie as soon as possible.
You know how long I've been waiting for this?
Last year, it would have been very difficult for Marvel to greenlight a project like this one, because they already have a bunch of secondary characters starring in too many projects. And Gambit is not Wolverine. He wasn't even part of the original X-Men, and was a secondary member for many years. But this is Gambit's year. He was every fan's favorite character in X-Men 97, starred in the best episode of that series, and people loved Channing Tatum's portrayal in live action. He might not be as popular as Professor X or Magneto, but Gambit is no longer an unknown mutant who can't sell tickets. Now he has fans, and casual audiences know who he is. 5 years ago, your aunt only knew the main X-Men members, but thanks to Deadpool and Wolverine, now she knows who Gambit is. This guy deserves his own project much more than Ironheart, Agatha, War Machine, or even Vision.
Right you are.
And the actor who plays the character is key. Besides being quite well known, Channing Tatum is committed to the character. He said he would kill kittens to play Gambit. He was about to direct the movie himself before Disney bought Fox. He wanted to keep the costume he wore in Deadpool and Wolverine because of his love for the character. And after appearing in the movie, he said he still has faith in starring in his own project. It's a very similar story to Ryan Reynolds with Deadpool. In both cases, we have actors who are in love with the comic book character, who will respect the source material, and who are supported by fans. They may not be Oscar contenders, but we can be sure they will do everything possible to give us a good product because they are fans of these characters, just like us. They don't want to do this just for the money. They're fulfilling a dream.
Special.
And there are more similarities. The scene shared by Ryan is very reminiscent of the test footage of Deadpool that was leaked in 2014. It's as if Marvel were winking at us, asking if we really want to see Channing Tatum as Gambit again. And I for sure do. Besides, Remy was the most interesting member of the Resistance in The Void, and the only one who hadn't appeared in live action before. Blade had his trilogy, Elektra appeared in Daredevil, and then had her own movie that no one liked, and Laura was very important in Logan. I know some want to see a new Blade movie starring Wesley Snipes, because Ryan Reynolds himself said he wanted the actor to have a farewell movie in the style of Logan. But if you ask me, the priority should be the Gambit movie. It would be something new that we haven't seen before in live action.
I would like to see that.
So the actor wants it, the fans want it, the general audience might like it, and it makes sense to make a movie about this character. But there are two problems with this. The first one is money. Marvel always aims very high at multi-million-dollar projects that dominate the box office. Even though Gambit has gained a lot of popularity this year, he's still not the most popular X-Man. There's no way his standalone movie would gross $1 billion, not even $800 million or $600 million, even if they tell the best superhero story ever. Maybe Marvel can turn Gambit into an icon in live action, like they did with the Guardians of the Galaxy, who were a mega secondary group, and became a multi-million-dollar franchise. But it's more likely that will happen after Gambit shows up in a couple of movies, and people grow attached to the character. We're not in 2014 anymore, when Guardians 1 was released. Now it's much harder to introduce a new character in live action and have people rush to the theater. And I know what you're gonna say. Fox had the same thoughts about a Deadpool project. That's why they halted the production of that movie for a decade, and when they finally made it, it grossed $782 million. It was the highest grossing mutant movie and one of Fox's biggest successes ever. Why can't something similar happen with Gambit? This is also a movie that's been frozen in pre-production for years, with an actor who desperately wants to play this character in live action, and oh, what a coincidence. Gambit also appeared in X-Men Origins Wolverine, and was not very well adapted. Just like Deadpool.
Coincidence?
Deadpool cost $58 million, not $200 like the other superhero movies in 2016. Gambit would need some special effects for his powers, but it shouldn't be a $250 million movie. Marvel could spend at most $100 million on production, and considering these movies need to gross more than double the investment to be profitable, Marvel would already be making money with $250 million in the box office. Those are easily achievable numbers for a Gambit movie because there have been 21 MCU movies that grossed more than $250 million. But there's one more problem. Channing Tatum is 44 years old. He's not old by any means, and he can play Gambit right now. He's in shape, and the behind scenes show he can move well. The problem is that if Tatum is integrated into the MCU to be part of the new X-Men, he'll probably be one of the oldest in the cast.
I don't understand.
If Marvel adapts the second version of Secret Wars from the comics, it's likely they'll do a soft reboot, keeping some characters and their stories, and replacing others. I'm sure Kevin Feige will use that opportunity to introduce the X-Men into Universe 616, and make them the most important superhero group from then on. They should choose young actors who can play the X-Men for many more years, not just for 2 or 3 movies and that's it. So the main members of the X-Men should be between 25 and 35 years old, not over 40 like Tatum. I know he did well in Deadpool and Wolverine, but it would make no sense to have a version of Gambit who's 55 years old walking around young adults.
I got older.
This is a big issue because why would Marvel make a standalone movie about a character who won't appear in the main universe? They could justify it by saying that Channing Tatum will be Gambit in another universe, and that the Remy from Universe 616 will be played by a new actor. Exactly what's going to happen in DC with Batman. We have Robert Pattinson in the Matt Reeves universe, and a different actor will play Bruce Wayne in James Gunn's new DCU. But it would be a bit confusing unless they do the following. At the end of Deadpool and Wolverine, Wade asks the TVA agents to save the members of the Resistance who are in the Void. It's very likely that this portal was created by the TVA, who will rescue Gambit to send him back to his universe. Remy doesn't know where he was born, which is a joke about his canceled movie.
Maybe I was born here. It's hard to know for sure.
But they could tell us that he actually had a home universe, but the TVA made him forget everything. The Gambit movie would take place before Secret Wars, and we'd see Channing Tatum arriving in his original universe. They could take elements from the original script for the canceled movie written by Josh Zatumer. In that story, we were going to see Gambit's origins as an orphaned child in New Orleans, who was adopted by the LeBeau family and trained as a thief. Remy would fall in love with Prima Donna, a girl from a rival family, and as he grew up, he would try to unite the two families. After failing at doing so, he would travel to Paris, where he would end up working for Nathaniel Essex, better known as Mr. Sinister. Along the way, we'd see how Gambit learns to control his powers and forms a band of mutants to pull off heists, like Ocean's 11, but with superpowers. There would be cameos of lesser-known mutants, and Marvel would introduce Mr. Sinister in live action for the first time, something insiders have been talking about for months. This would be a fun and cheap movie. All these events would take place in a universe separate from the MCU, just like the 2 Deadpool movies, which had nothing to do with the other movies produced by Fox.
Confusing!
Think of it this way. Gambit is going to live in his own universe, and he won't have anything to do with the new X-Men of the 616 universe. The way to avoid confusion is for Gambit not to be part of this new group, just like Deadpool didn't show up in the X-Men movies. Marvel would stay true to the source material, because Remy joined the X-Men in the 90s, decades after the group debuted in the comics. There wouldn't be repeated characters in different universes, and the Gambit variant of the 616 universe would appear many years later, once Channing Tatum stops playing the character. But I don't think Marvel wants to do this. The MCU isn't known for making prequels, and a big part of the general audience won't be interested in watching a Marvel movie that has nothing to do with the main universe. On top of that, I doubt Kevin Feige would want to put a movie like this right before the end of the multiverse saga. They probably want to release several projects related to Doomsday and Secret Wars to boost the box office numbers for those movies, just like they did with Infinity War and Endgame.
Ah, that's a shame.
But there is a solution. What if Marvel uses the Gambit movie to introduce the new X-Men and kill 2 birds with 1 stone? At the beginning of the movie, we'd see Channing Tatum arriving in a completely new universe, where he would meet Rogue. There would be touches of romantic comedy, a genre where Tatum does very well, with a tone that fits Gambit's personality. And we'd see this relationship adapted for the first time in live action. Rogue should have Captain Marvel's powers just like in the comics, and they can adapt the adventures they had in Gambit and Rogue. Yeah, that's how their comics are called. Super original. At the end of the movie, we would meet the X-Men that live in this universe, who would accept Remy as a member of the group. There would be a nod to Secret Wars, because in the post-credits scene, all these characters would arrive at Battleworld, the fusion of all the universes created by Doctor Doom. And after Secret Wars, Gambit and these new X-Men would become the mutants of the main universe, making this movie not just a fun Gambit adventure, but the introduction of the X-Men to the MCU.
That is the dumbest idea you've ever had!
If Marvel thinks Tatum is too old for the new universe, the character could sacrifice himself during Secret Wars, and the MCU could introduce a new Gambit in the next saga. If they give him an epic death like in X-Men 97, people's tears are gonna flood the cinema. And who knows, Channing Tatum could come back as one of Apocalypse's horsemen, something that happened in the comics, and will probably be adapted in the second season of X-Men 97. We'd have to wait many years to see that in live action. But don't worry, Marvel wants to keep making movies for 85 years.
That is so not true.
Oh, but it is true. Kevin Feige himself said it. We tell you all about it in this video over here.
Ooh, I'm about to make a name for myself here.